Thanks everyone for joining. It's great to see you all. It's our first time in Ghent. Thanks a lot to Lighthouse to hosting us. We usually do the event in Brussels, but one of the biggest complaints we have is when do you come to Ghent? Because people at Ghent were a bit jealous because we already organized something last year in Antwerp. So we received a wave of complaints because they were seeing that Antwerp is even worse than Brussels to reach. So we say, okay, we have to find, and we got lucky that Lighthouse accepted our nice request. Without further introduction, do you know the setup? I know some of you who is coming to our event for the first time. Great. So maybe I have to explain how it works. Setup is very super simple. We only have one speaker, Nadine. She will introduce herself. She will do that much better than me. We have one speaker. The talk usually lasts 20-25 minutes. Then we'll have a guided conversation because we prepared some extra questions and topics that we will address together. And then we'll invite you also to raise all your questions. Following that, we'll invite you for some drinks and some pizza in the area that you already discovered in the opposite side of this huge office. So without further talking, I'll let you the stage.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Lighthouse. Has anybody been to this office before? So, welcome to our office. We're very proud of it. We just extended it, actually doubled. And in case you don't know what we do, maybe just for starters, at the core, we are a data company. We provide commercial tools to hotels to make better revenue driving decisions. So, how that looks like is we collect vast amounts of data, we transform them, and we make them very visual, very usable, very empowering for our users. We have a great track record of very big hotel brands that you might also recognize, but it really ranges from big chain hotels to small hotels that use our dashboards and our decision making tools. So, in a nutshell, this is what we do here. And this is me. Very nice to meet you. I'm Nadine. I'm head of product innovation here at Lighthouse. I've been here for 5 years. And I am going to talk to you about a topic that I really like to talk about these days, and that is how did we get to where we are today? How did we come from being like any other scale up to having a valuation north of 1 billion US dollars? And I'm going to tell you this through the spectrum of me being a product manager here and what we've seen in the last 5 years. So I hope this will be interesting. And just for starters, I would like to spend a little bit of time just speaking about scale ups. Who here has heard of Sheryl Sandberg, former CEO of Meta? Yeah, she's written some really good books. I hope some ladies might have read. I can highly recommend. Here's what she says about scale ups, right? If you're offered a seat on a rocket ship, you don't ask what seat, you just get on. Sheryl, I appreciate everything you do. I hate that quote because really, what does it tell you, right? It basically says there's this rocket ship. And if you're invited, you will sit down, like a nice passenger seat, maybe by the window. It's taking off, and you're like along for a great ride, and you're just going to have an amazing time. That's not really the reality of what this looks like. For starters, there are no real passenger seats at companies like this. In reality, you will be standing most of the time, you'll be working very hard, and the rocket ship you're on is being built in flight. So just picture this for a second. Does it sound convenient? Does it sound safe? No, exactly. So this is a bit what it's like to work in a scale up. In reality, it looks very shiny, but it's a very rocky road. And this is also why actually not a lot of companies really make it that far, because they're just, let's say, many opportunities for hiccups while you go through it. Many just stall, many have to exit before they ever reach scale like we did in the end. So what did we do differently, right? And I would like to approach this talk a bit through my own view of the last 5 years. For all the guys here in the front row with the notebooks, this is not going to be a silver bullet to how do we do the same. I think it always depends, obviously, on the company. And I had a talk with my own product directors leading up to this talk about, like, what shall I even be bringing up here? What is relevant? Because there are so many pivotal moments. Like, I could be talking about this for days, and I'm probably not even going to cover everything. But what were some of these key things we decided that actually put us on this track? Again, there are probably more, but let's discover together, shall we? So let's go back to 2019. This is me there in the back. I had just joined. the really confident guy here in the front, this is Ivo, my boss. He's still here today. He hasn't aged a day. And he looks super confident here because Ivo had it all figured out already then. When I joined, he said, Nadine, this is going to be easy. If we want to grow and if we want to gain scale, we have to do two things. We're going to sell more units to more users. Yeah. Also, we were the market leader at what was then called rate shopping. So we were collecting a lot of rates data for hotels, showing that compared to competition. We were the market leader. Everyone was using us. What could possibly go wrong, right? Turns out exactly that, because sometimes your success in terms of growth isn't really your friend. Once you've sold to everybody, yeah, who else are you going to sell to? You have two options, right? You either find somebody else who has the same problem you can sell this to, or you have to find a different problem to solve. This is basically the first lesson that we learned is we have to start looking beyond. So we were very historically, something we're very proud of was to be very tuned in with our customers. I'm sure a lot of you guys, when you think about your own roles, you would claim you're customer centric. I hope you listen to what they say, you listen to their feedback, you track what they need. That's what we were doing too. We were very tuned in. We were making adjustments as we went to our cash cow product. But what we weren't doing until then was really looking beyond. What are the pain points they're maybe not talking about? What else is happening in the industry? What new technology is there can help us really drive this forward? What macro trends are impacting the hospitality industry? So really, in a nutshell, what is our next big thing? Not the next feature or the next filter. What is the next big thing? And our CEO always likes to say, if you have nailed product market fit for your base products, you have listened to your customers, you have delivered what they need, you have basically earned the right to focus on the day after tomorrow. And it's really a right to earn. You cannot, if you haven't achieved, let's say, scale with your base product, how are you going to start innovating big if you haven't even solved the first pain? And for us, we were at the moment where we said, you know what? We've earned this right. We will start focusing on the future. And when I started, my first assignment was to launch a new product. For the future, we brought a new product to market and actually carved out a whole new category at the time in the hospitality industry of market data products. And that's when we said, you know what? This went really well. Like, this is the thing, right? It's how you grow. It's actually showing. Let's organize against this. And that's when I became head of product innovation, and we had a big pillar of what we called product growth. And this is basically the pillar that was focusing on anything that's relevant today, like any user requests that are dealing with what's missing, how can we improve, how can we carve out a competitive edge, what might we want to do next year. And I was more dealing with what can be the next big revenue stream, what can be the next big partnership, where's the industry heading. And that's how we were set up. Basically, we just opened our third horizon as the company, and you could directly see the impact. So while before we were just really growing nicely, gradually with one product, now you can see it picking up, but the mix is much more substantial. So that's really what's driving the like hockey curve you're starting to see, except someone pointed out for the pandemic, we can maybe talk about it like over the drink, but it's a bit of a dark time. But this already brings me to, I would say, the pivotal moment number 2. We now went from single product to multi-product. We went from our nearest horizons to the third. We had to start organizing against that as well. So you get more traction on more products. How do you organize against this and the product and engineering leadership? So we tried a lot. Ask me about it afterwards. I'm sure we've tried it. So what we were doing first, also especially in the engineering teams, we started to specialize teams more. So we were really carving out teams that were only doing data integration. Data science team grew, I think, from 1 person to 20 we are now. We carved out platform teams to really sustain everything we were doing on all these fronts to make sure that still a core was being maintained. And we went from a very time boxed approach where basically you as a PM, you would decide, this is what I want to do next. I throw it into the basket of my designer, who throws it to the developer, and he has 6 weeks to solve it now. We went to a continuous approach where actually all these 3 functions are joined by the hip and they continuously solve the problems that the users are encountering. And talent acquisition became very important. I'm going to talk about it in a second as well. So a lot of reorganization in the space. And we also figured out, so from a product team perspective, with big ideas, so again, think about it, like we're looking beyond, right? We're chasing the next big thing. There are a lot of opportunities that you start to discover. It's like a blessing and a curse. Like you'll really see what is interesting, what you want to invest in, but there are a lot of them, and you'll figure out that's probably a lot more than one team can manage. So what do we do with all of these? And that's when we started to stray a little bit away from our own setup. And we said, you know what? Actually, everybody should be innovating, right? If there's an opportunity in the market, we have to come in with full force, and we just cannot let that go. Like we have to grab it. Like we're on a wave. Let's ride it. So we started to basically innovate in every single team. At some point, I'm looking at Evo, I think everybody was doing something new. Working on a new product. In the last 2 years, I think we launched 3 or 4 products to the market. We acquired 3 adjacent companies, worked with 2 main clients on partnerships. And then one day, you wake up and it's like, oh no, what happened to our core? Forgotten a little bit about this. And I think that's another big lesson from this. I think there are so many opportunities and there's so many things you can invest your time on, but we at some point forgot a little bit to earn the right to really invest that much in that horizon. And it showed that we had some customer requests that we know they were coming in, but it didn't seem so important. But at some point that catches up with you and something had to change. We said, okay, this is not working. Like clearly there are areas that were blind spots we didn't really follow up on. This is not what we want to do. And on top of that, something else that we had never really spent so much time on is we were still solving problems and even third horizon problems for the same ICP, like the customer we knew really well. Like we had a list of problems they had, we knew what was happening in that space. But what we realized, we did a full TAM analysis at some point, you know what? Actually, there are a lot of potential clients out there that we're not addressing at all. We almost have all chains in the world working with us, but what about the small B&B next door? The penetration of the hospitality segment was actually not as much as we thought. There were a lot of users. We didn't address it all. We didn't really know the needs. We never spoken to them, but probably they need tools. So again, it called a bit for reorganization. And this is where we said, you know what? We're going to go to a more customer-centric approach. So instead of organizing by horizon, we're going to do is we're going to throw them into each and every vertical. So we're going to segment these customers based on needs, based on user personas. And within this vertical, everybody is responsible to cover all these bases, catering to the core, but innovating at the same time. So this was one of the latest shifts we've actually done. And coming to these teams, and I alluded to it before throughout the reorganization, we figured out that we have to focus a little bit differently. Within these trios, this is really, I would say, the core of how we do business today. Product management, engineering, and design, joined by the hip, we expect quite a lot of these trios. So first of all, I alluded to it before, we expect them to be extremely tuned in, not only with the customer base, but with the market. And that's also where the leadership level comes in. So people like Ivo, myself, we have a very close connection with our own boards, with industry experts. So like we spent a lot of time on research, on intake, just to know really on all fronts what's happening in the market at all times. Then we usually assess for sometimes quite a while. So what is the next thing that we actually want to embark on? So you don't run into this risk again of chasing every single opportunity, but really seeing what moves the needle for your business more than another initiative. We select extremely carefully. So it's something we had to learn in the last, I would say, 2-3 years. What initiatives do you say no to? It might seem very shiny, it might seem very interesting, but you can't do them all, and you only have what I think 8 hours, normally 10 maybe in your workday. So which ones do we really want to pursue? Once we've decided though, we're very quick. So then we're really quick to execute, very quick to get a proof of concept out there that we learn from very quickly. So that's really where I'm color coding this year on purpose, because that's a big shift and you won't understand how big it is. 5 years ago, when I was still product manager, I was spending a lot of time here, like executing based on my clients' feedback, my clients' requests. But now what we really want the trios to do is spend a lot more time up there deciding what to do next, because if we have the right product investment strategy, the rest, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but you are really sure you're not wasting your time on feature delivery that is not moving the needle for your business. And that also meant we really had to step up our strategic game. And you see it and also in the evaluations for other team members, people who have been executing very well. Now we were really more assessing for strategic skills. Can you make a good business case? Are you data driven? Can you make these type of decisions for us, or do we have to get involved? So it was a bit of a reality check as well for how we assess. And that's when we put a growth framework in place for all our product managers, all our designers, engineering layers, to make sure for every level we're very clear with our expectations so they can also live up to these expectations. Something else, like I was contemplating if I should put this here, because it is a bit of a, yeah, like a laughing and a crying eye, right? I would love to tell you guys we nailed this. I think we tried this now for the third year in a row, and we finally, I think this went quite well this time. The first years, I don't even want to talk about it, but it really helped. So the moment you focus on initiative selection, this becomes interesting, because that's really where you force your teams to look at the business impact they have delivered. I had an interesting moment. I was 2 years ago, we were doing a wrap up in the year. I'm sure you guys all do this, where you celebrate achievements and everything that you have accomplished in your teams. We had a long list at the time of features that we launched. And I was sitting there, I was thinking, what did they all do? Did every single delivery really lead to anything? Did they really support the business objective? And the answer is most likely no. So we really invested in this product, in this process as of then, to say every year, every vertical has very clear objectives that all have to be measurable. So we know that the initiatives are supporting them. And that's something we've invested a lot in. It was very painful. Happy to chat a little bit more about it. So I think in a nutshell, it wasn't only due to all of these things, but some of the pivotal moments were really looking beyond your day to day. What's the next big thing? Make sure once you have that, organize against it. Are you ready for what your company is going to be tomorrow? Are you covering all the blind spots? Please do. And maintain very sharp focus with your team. Make sure they focus on the right thing and not on some vanity metrics. Something I think would be interesting, like, sometimes it's good to take a step back, right? So when you come to work on Monday, ask yourself a little bit, when you look at your roadmap, or let's look at last year, like all the things you've delivered, what horizons were you delivering against? Were those bugs? Were those customer requests against your current products? Were those initiatives that make you ready for what's to come in 2, 3, or 5 years? Are you staffed correctly? Do you have the right skill sets to achieve your vision? And lastly, what are you celebrating in your companies? Is it feature releases and everybody is really happy about it? Or is it really the business outcome that sometimes comes months after, years after? What is it that you're holding your teams accountable for? And last but not least, just want everybody to remember, if any recruiter calls you and asks you, do you want to join the rocket ship because you're having a comfortable seat, most likely they're lying to you, because it's really a whole lot of work. So thank you for listening, and I'm ready for the Q&A. Sure.
Follow-up additional question. And the first one, because you changed brand and changed name, right?
Title, right? Not name. But
Company that you-
oh, name. Oh, sorry. I thought you meant, yeah, exactly. Yes, we did, from OTA Insight to Lighthouse. Correct. That was a very interesting moment, actually. That was a year ago, 2 years ago. So indeed, we were called, at the time, we were called OTA Insight. I don't know if that rings a bell with anybody. It probably doesn't ring a bell with anyone outside of the industry. And most people don't know what an OTA even is and what it stands for. But it was basically, at the time, an OTA in our world is an online travel agent. And our first product that I kept on going on about, that's basically us going into these online travel agents like Booking.com, Expedia, and we're taking out the rates for a property, comparing it to their own website and to competitors. That's all we did. Perfect name, right? But remember the multi-product strategy. Once that kicked in, the name, it just didn't. We outgrew the name the moment we set out on that. And even to an extent that our customers were asking us, guys, isn't that a bit silly at this point? So we got a lot of actually pressure. Were we a bit late to the game? I almost wonder, like we got a lot of pressure from the market to maybe revisit this. Plus, we started on a acquisition journey that had it in it. I would say, I think in the last years we acquired 5 companies, so we really expanded the services. We had to react, and that's also why we went for a name like Lighthouse, guiding the ships in the dark. It's a bit like the data guiding the hotels to the right decision. We have a lot more opportunity under this brand name, and the impact on the client base, we prepared this very well. It was a very positive reception. It fits what we want to do much better. So the whole story, I think the big vision we have of being this like omni platform for hotels can live under this umbrella. I really couldn't live under OTA and set anymore. But I think it was a process. I don't want to lie now, but it probably took 1.5 years of preparation with marketing, design, checking the market, the sentiment, which colors, which name, you name it. It was a massive undertaking. But client perspective was very good. We want to be obviously seen as one platform. We have different products that have different names, but right now everybody, knows us under Lighthouse, and they speak about using Lighthouse and not our sub-product names. So it's been a big success, but it's been a very big change at the same time for everybody, of course.
Speaking about that, you mentioned that you started an acquisition strategy of
Yeah.
multiple products. How are they embedded? And maybe the underlying question is, what's the impact on your product organization?
Oh, wow. Yeah, we need another talk for it. It always sounds very shiny when you announce, we acquired another company, and then everybody is happy. And also, I was part of a couple of due diligence processes, and that product fits yours, right? It's so complementary. This is amazing. We join forces. And then they join, and the culture is completely different after all, right? And the product is in a different code base. And these developers can't work here and they can't work there, and no one wants to. It's a big undertaking, and we are just about to. Some are easier to integrate than others, definitely. One big acquisition was a BI company in the US that we now, I could say, fully embedded 2 years down the road in the company. So we merged their product leadership into our organization under Evo. We basically merged the features over that we wanted. Basically, our approach is a bit this. If you imagine you have 2 companies, right? Different code bases, different feature sets. What we try to do, and I'm just in the process of doing this now again, we try to work against vision types. So we usually establish a vision type of where we want to be maybe in 5 years, and what jobs are we solving with this vision type. And then we look at what do we need from this company to support these jobs, and that is being taken over. We never really re-platform the whole thing into our toolkit to not bloat the application. We only take over what we need, or we reinvent it at the same time and power it with the data they have. It depends a bit, but we try to, like, by no means, if you think merging, we don't just put our color on it and pull everything in and the screens grow and grow. We try to do this very diligently and like to take a little bit more time, but then also do it well. But it depends a bit on the type of company. And then the product people you take into your teams. Like, I just had 2 great additions from our latest acquisition in my own team, but they're not necessarily used to your processes or just what I explained to you now. Like, this big focus on selecting what problem to work on next is maybe nothing that has been practiced in these smaller companies. So a lot of learning and a lot of hand holding. We try to establish buddy systems for them within our company so they get the right exposure. For lots documented on Confluence, of course.
And it's an interesting transition to a topic we discussed on how do you ensure, because obviously you're growing, and I know that one of the biggest challenges when you start having multiple people is maintaining the quality and the experience. And what have you put in place to try to maintain your product management standards?
It's an ongoing process for sure. It's something that we feel very, very strongly about. I think one of the biggest foundational frameworks, but there are a couple, is the fact that we put a growth framework in place first and foremost. So That's something we did together with HR. I think product was one of the first departments due to that change that had it. It was then rolled out to design, to research, to the whole, I think, engineering culture as well. And it's basically, it lays out all the competencies we expect of an individual for every single level. And it goes from, I think, IC1 to, don't ask me, 6. And then for every single level, you have about 5, 6, sometimes 7 competencies that we do expect. And they range from very practical product work to attitudes, to thought leadership, you name it, but they're very clearly laid out with examples. And then 3 times a year, we assess these product managers, see where they sit. We bring examples. We identify the gap to the level they either are or want to be if they want to grow. And then we put a growth plan in place, which can be an exposure plan on the job, which can be a buddy system, which can be, in some cases, also individual coaching. We get an expert in, it can be workshops we organize for everybody. But that's how we try to, well, set the bar, and the bar is rather high, and try to close the gap for the people who are not there yet. That's a bit what we have in general. And then obviously we have a whole framework of weekly one-on-ones, quarterly catch up on the goals, what I think most of you guys will also have with your managers.
We'll go back a bit in time, but we discussed and you highlighted the fact that one of the pivotal moments was the introduction of that product trio and
Yeah.
re-emphasizing on the core responsibility. Obviously, if I won't preach more for this audience, but can you describe a bit more on what was the trigger point that drove you to that decision?
I'm honestly trying to think. I think generally, I wonder if it was a real trigger. I'm trying to think. It was more that we were generally, there was a lot of frustration around time boxing. There was a lot of frustration around the feeling that we underutilized certain stakeholders, and we as product people, like, it was very, in a way, we were very product led, in a way that the product manager was calling a lot of shots. I think that's what's safe to say. So like comfy for us, but if you have a strong designer, they often didn't get the right seat at the table, and opportunities were missed. Engineers weren't as involved as they should have been. And I think that is something that dragged on for a while. We got some fresh blood in actually through the acquisitions as well. We got a new head of growth, a new head of BI at the time. And we were putting a lot of options on the table and discussing what could work. And that was the concept where we landed, because what we really want is a lot of empowerment. Ideally, these people work as little units and they can make decisions very independently, stand for them, defend them. But it's a journey, right? On paper, this looks really great. But again, not everybody is usually on par from day one or is comfortable with that. Like the moment the product manager steps out of the circle and then, but who's leading the meeting? Any one of you guys who's left in the room. So it's a bit of a mindset shift, culture shift, but again, also comes with, again, training and re-explaining it again and again. So it's a journey, far from perfect, but for now, also motivation wise, we've seen that makes a big difference. This feeling of ownership of your own subdomain, you have people to work with. Yeah.
And you mentioned the challenge with the alignment, because the more autonomy you give to your product teams, especially now you have 3 pillars, but with probably quite some overlap from an application perspective. What are the rituals you have to ensure that people stay in?
Probably too many almost at this point. So we have, and I'm just trying to start from the most obvious ones. So we have what we call a PED steerco, which means that every other week, a team, and it rotates all the time, is presenting in detail what they are doing now, later, next, what they just achieved. We're having a pre-read for everybody, so everyone attends. You can ask all your questions, so you see also what's potentially on the radar of this team. So if they're working on something that's interesting for you, you will pick it up, and then you can have a follow-up. So the PD, so it's run by these trios for their domain, and then all the other trios and other managers would then, for like these verticals you've seen, basically everyone else can then join and pick up what's important to them. So that is, I think, one really good way that we found. In terms of product directors, so all my counterparts that are heading other verticals, we meet once a week anyway, just to highlight synergies, problems, overlaps. We have a bi-weekly product meeting where everybody else can also attend and show what they've just been working on. But I think the PED Steerco is probably the most formal way to really be on top of everything that is happening. Usually they have to record also an executive summary afterwards, like a 10-minute just trailer about, in case someone couldn't join, like the highlights to make sure nothing falls between the cracks. And that's usually where we uncover synergies, common problems that we might want to tackle. So I think that's probably the most powerful one at this point.
And probably one question, obviously it's a great success, but if you had to change one thing and say you wish you would have not learned that the hard way.
So many. Like, I wonder, it's maybe not in terms of decisions. I think because we try, I think maybe two takeaways here. There's so many things we tried in terms of processes that really didn't work. And it's impossible to just take one. We tried a lot of things that just didn't hit home. And I think what we really learned through that is I wouldn't undo this, because I think the learning was that's all okay, as long as you stay reflective, as long as you have these points that every other quarter you just look at yourself like, is this still working for us with the new company on board? And if the answer is no, you change it, and that's totally okay. And then of course in retrospect you can say, oh, we should have never time boxed, but at the time maybe it made sense. You have to be reactive. I think the one thing where I do believe we maybe, if I could go back in time, I would like to correct, it's not so much a decision, more like a topic we didn't manage to wrap our heads around, and that is data governance within our own companies. So to really be very data driven in decision making, despite being a data company, I'm almost embarrassed to say it, this was nothing that was widely prioritized. So you had insights, but they were almost like for our clients, they're very segmented. Like you have stuff in Salesforce and HubSpot and Google Analytics, our own product tools. So that's something that was always a struggle. I think I put this on my end of year for myself. Every single year working here, we have to be more data driven, but we never really had the right tools, the right structure. And I think if we had that in place, we could have made better product decisions a lot earlier in some cases. Something we're doubling down on really this year. I have high hopes, but I think that's really the one thing. I think when it comes to data, more is often more. To have a good process, to have good tools, have it accessible for everybody. I think that was something we maybe missed for too long. Yeah.
Great. Now I suggest that we propose you to ask all your questions. We only have one mic, so I think
We'll throw it around.
Anyone having any questions? Yeah, I see one already there. Yeah.
It's my mic.
I will have to
Okay,
because
it's
there is
fine.
only one.
I can also speak. I mean, it's not that much of a.
You talked about your internal organization in today, tomorrow, one day. And after that, you changed into the more a client segmentation approach. How do you see your product evolve via that new organization? Because of course, chains have different needs than others. While before you probably had one core product. How do you see that evolve?
It's a good question. It's still evolving as we speak, by the way. So I think what's strong about this is really that we figured out that, just like you said, chains have very different needs than individual single hotels. It's wildly different. So we were not really doing them justice. And what was happening, and that's maybe like a reverse answer to your question. I started like when we were still in the old structure, like in my third horizon, I was saying at some point, I think 75% of all hotels in the world are independents, massive market. So let's do something in that space. The problem is because there are so many unknowns, and we also didn't have any clients. So like the business case, it was there, but it wasn't tangible enough to really get a lot of resources allocated. So the chains would always win. If then Hilton knocks on your door and says, "Oh, I need this button and the tool," well, their contract is massive. No one can say no. Also, I can't say no. I can't justify that. So we found it really hard to staff against this and to really get the focus also from other teams like marketing, from sales. How can I tell a salesperson who's going to earn massive commission on a Hilton deal, why don't you go sell to the individual B&B? So we were trying to unlock, let's say, revenue that was hard to unlock because of the structure we were in, and due to the fact that we were always competing against one another for resources. And that's when we said, you know what? No, we're going to make a conscious decision actually for this year in our OKRs. We are investing on like 3 pillars, and that is like, I should know this by heart, disrupting the chain status quo. So we want to innovate in that segment. There is an allocation for that of X% of dev. Then independent segment, massive opportunity. This is my allocation and it doesn't move. It's within my pillar. And then it is up to me, right? I have sub goals on commercial targets, also on churn. So I need to then make the right calls to say, to what extent do I want to maintain my product, enhance my product, or look for the next big thing? You can always say there's like this kind of allocation you run of 70 today, tomorrow 30 on the next day. It always shifts a little bit based on the opportunity, but you are responsible for all of these figures yourself with your allocation, and that is working quite well, especially also if you have the same in the commercial teams. If they're not staffed like this, again, different discussion. So I think for now this works. Just to come back to the question, like how will that evolve? I think this will be okay for quite a while. We keep on acquiring, obviously, companies. So we will have to see, how we structure this. We might also expand services in the future. We're very open to revisit.
Is your acquisition strategy also related to those pillars, or is it transverse?
It depends. Yeah, there are different reasons to acquire a company, right? We have acquired companies to take out competitors because we were maybe in the chain pillar hitting a wall in a certain market, and there was this like annoying, great competitor, and we say, you know what, like they keep on stealing business, like we are going to acquire them. Maybe we have feature parity, we will take the clients, put them on our tools, hope they stay. We keep the talent, and we basically clear the way for further client acquisition. That can be one reason. Another reason can be to expand really your services and your offering, which we did with the company in Bruges last year. They had a product very adjacent to ours. We were recommending prices to hotels. They could distribute those prices to all these online travel agents. Great synergy. So this is something we would also consider. This was specifically for the independent space. So it always depends on, I think the BI company I was talking about was unlocking US business for us, where we were struggling to get a foot in. So there are different reasons, and also always depends on the opportunity you get. Not everyone is up for grabs. So it's a bit of, what problems do we still want to solve? Do we want to do this alone? Do we want to do this in partnership? Or do we want to take somebody who's already solving it? And it's a case by case assessment, really, but we assess pretty much all the time by now. It's become a sport, but fun. Oh, sorry.
Thanks.
So you mentioned that it's really high on your list that this year you want to be more data driven, to use data in your problem selection, to choosing what to work on. So why now? Why is it important now? In the past, you used some other inputs to make decisions. Did you maybe reach some limits with that and you need it now? And maybe just a general question of, is there something else that you're maybe not doing now that you would like to do more to support problem discovery, problem selection?
I think that's a great question. I think indeed it was, to be fair, it was always important. We should have always had it. But I think at the time, if you go back 5 years, again, we had this one product and we were still growing this and we were perfecting it. And a big stream of input came from our customers. We had a very good connection with them. We have a very good feedback process, actually. So every single piece of feedback from every sales call, from any touch point, reaches us in a very consolidated format where we basically had, you can imagine like a prior list of these are the things that are being requested, and you would put it in your typical quadrant of how much has it been requested and like how much effort is it, and then I would prioritize this. What we weren't really looking at that much at the time was, is this now going to make me a lot more revenue tomorrow? Because the revenue was coming through the product, you're making it better, not wrong, but it was working for a really long time. We had very basic usage statistics that could help us to point us into different directions. Something we should do even more of. We started now. We're just about to build out our foundational research team, and I think that has been, for me personally, really a game changer. So traditionally we had one person, I think, in research. So if you really had, but also a lot like usability research. Let's say I wanted to work on this feature. I had already decided I want to work on this feature, and then I pull them in and they can help me to test. They can help me to find out how to kind of drive it home with the customer. What we now do, and that's data we are just starting to collect a lot more, just got a tool for it, which is what we call our research repository. And this is where we have our researchers who are now, I think, 5, 6 in the company. They log all the insights from foundational research. And that's something we have never really done before. very new, so that we really go in. We did this for the independent pillar when we open it, to really understand who is this persona, and what exactly are they really doing in their day-to-day, and really write this down. So also back to sharing knowledge between the verticals. Should anybody else want to know, people can also go and check, which was usually not the case. You had always to go to the product manager who has maybe worked on this initiative years ago. So like a centralized research repository, so not so much data in terms of usage and numbers, but sometimes also qualitative data. So what are people saying? What's happening in the space? What other problems are there? This is a massive knowledge base. And for us, for this year, to really select initiatives, this has been almost more of a driver than anything else, because if you have that quantified, you have a great starting point if you really know overall what's cooking in that sector, and you can go in and find it easily. So I think besides the typical usage tracking, sales stats, what I was referring to before, I think this research repository has been already and will be a game changer for us once we grow this more.
One of the things that really resonated was that laser thing that really cool to make it an acronym to remember, by the way. And I totally agree that I think one of the things that really is the game changer for product managers is how you transition, be more focused on making more thoughtful selections. But there is also a risk of being too stuck on that, because, and also maybe two kind of related questions. How do you make sure that doesn't become a kind of analysis paralysis kind of thing? And the other thing is, how do you deal with uncertainties as well while you are trying to figure it out, right?
I think that's a fantastic question. I think it's also something that is everyone is also very different, especially when it comes to uncertainty. Some people, you must recognize this from your companies as well, some people just deal very well with this, say, you know what, like I have enough information here to do this, and others would just research and research forever, and they're just not going to make any decisions. So I think there are two things we do. One is also in terms of, because there is still, and don't get me wrong, like I like to spend time in that part of this paradigm, but we still have to deliver stuff, right? We can't just make up our minds for a year and then that's all we do. So what we usually do is we maintain still a pipeline of quick wins, which are still user driven. So if we have nothing else to do, like what's the next big thing we know is going to be a good idea, right? Like we have a high certainty, it's scoped, like we can just develop this. If nothing else comes through, this is it. So we can just ship, worst case. That's one thing. And then about the selection process. So it's especially interesting since we have this trio constellation, because then it comes to the question, do we need consensus to move this forward? I think could talk about this for a really long time. But what we try to do is, what we drive home, and one of our principles, we have product principles we try to live by, and one is think big but start very small. So if you are in doubt, but this smells like a good idea, you have enough to prove that it should be on paper, but it seems like a big risk. How can you test that what's your risk, right? Is it a viability risk, feasibility risk? Can we do a prototype? Can we test it quickly? What is really the thing you want to find out? And that's also where we, again, pull now our researchers in a lot, who have a lot of experience. Like, how can I do a quick check on this? How can I de-risk it enough so I feel comfortable moving forward? Doesn't help you in every single situation, but it's usually what we try to remind our PMs of. If it seems big, it seems daunting, how can we break this down? How can we move quick with a very small incremental piece, and then we can build on it, worst case?
I'm curious if you can mention a couple of things that you do to empower your engineering team. So you leave the room.
So I think what has been already empowering, but I'm not an engineer, like I can just speak from what I observe. I think what has traditionally really not been the case is that a lot of decisions were made, especially what to build next, maybe sometimes even how to build it, was already decided by the PM, and maybe if we're lucky, the designer, and then it got only for like feasibility check. It kind of got on their desk, right? And they'd be like, what were you guys thinking when you put this together? So I think one of the big factors was already that we have one engineer always part in the trio. So even when it comes to strategy, so the big questions of how can we get more users on our app? How can we find the next big thing? There's always somebody present. Another thing that we like to do is we share back when we have our sprint reviews, we always share back the vision, also business stats, to give them a lot of context in which we operate. So we try to to the greatest extent, pull them also out of the development silo, that they see what has their feature moved, what impact did this have. We bring them in very early in ideation. So even if we think, okay, like that's maybe the thing we want to solve, we have a vague idea of where the journey could take us. Usually they're already involved to bring ideas in the first brainstorms, come with their best solutions. I think those are the main things. I think from my experience, really, what does work is if you give context that they can come with ideas, and you give them the room, you bring them in the room early enough that they can still have an influence. That seems to be, I would say, the more winning formula all in all. And then obviously when it comes to specific solutioning, they can decide how they solve it for sure. But I think the context and early involvement are probably the most impactful ones from what I've seen.
Yeah, first of all, I completely agree that investing more into the selection process makes a lot of sense. Just one question, because like I have the experience, often it's very difficult for product managers to let something go, to see it failed. How do you ensure that with something that you are then also really confident because you had this long phase, that you still fail quickly and make a cut when it's necessary?
There are two things that come to mind immediately. There might potentially be more. I think one important factor here is really success criteria. Like example, today, like we had a all-day workshop with an important partner, and we're actually embarking on something that's very new that no one has done in the industry before. Like it seems very big, and we're going to run a first test, and it's always uncomfortable, but it's never a good idea to just say, let's test this and see what happens. Have something in mind, have a benchmark, have a success criteria. Like, when are we walking away from this, and do it then as well. It's not enough if, let's say, one user adopts it. That is not a sign of traction if you had, I don't know, 1,000 onboarded on the batch. So what benchmark it against maybe past initiatives and really come up with the team. Okay, guys, like this is our commitment. If we reach this, it means something is there. We go to step 2. We don't reach this, we have to rethink. And we don't even have to, maybe we don't have to bin the whole initiative, but maybe we have to come at it from a different angle. And I think that's number one, success criteria, set them, but stick to them. And secondly, as a company, I don't know here who's in like product leadership. I think to normalize failure is really going a long way. Like it's not bad if something doesn't work. We might be saving ourselves a whole lot of code that nobody is going to use, but that's something we often don't celebrate. If we sunset a product, if we sunset an initiative, if we have learnings, there's often something that's brushed under the carpet, like where you say, this never happened, but it did, and we probably learned something. So I think that's also something we do. Well, we try to do a lot in our leadership layer where, well, if something doesn't work, it's fine. Like we move on to the next initiative, and we're happy we didn't waste any more time on it.
Teams a lot of ownership of the product and vision. And on the other hand, you have a strong company strategy with OKRs. How do you align both? You said you had to make tough decisions, but how do you match those two?
We try to strike a good balance, like usually how it works, especially for the OKRs. So there are, let's say, if you think about, let's say, really leadership of the company and the PMs and trios on the ground, really doing the day-to-day work, what we try to do is we meet in the middle. So from the company perspective, like what you saw, this kind of growth projection, to be honest, we're very strict on this. So it's not like we say, oh, let's see how much we grow next year. Like there are really expectations, like, and that goes down to the trios early on. So they would know, okay, like we need to, as a company, grow, I don't know, 30% usually, right? Every year. These are roughly the macro opportunities that we see. So things, really big things that like, let's go into new vertical, let's explore this. This might come from top down because often these are the people who have the best oversight of this. And it's in the room as a solution. What the trios do bottom up is then they look at, okay, this is the revenue figure. So what can we now do? We're in the independent pillar. This is the revenue we're already making now. Like, where are the opportunities where we really think we can achieve this? They come with their suggestions and what they think they can do in order to unlock it. We come with suggestions or insights that we have, because often that is a bit more like high level, whereas they have maybe more of a customer view or the more adjacent projects. And then you settle for, several rounds of almost pitching. Shall we do this or that? It's really a discussion where everyone can bring it to the table. But in the end, we then lock in what we find, will be the most lucrative way to roam in the end of the day. So it really, we meet right in the middle, I would say. And sometimes depending on, and there you see, to be in all fairness, right? You see also trios that have worked together for a long time, that are very tuned in with their vertical and their business. They will probably be able to put a lot of these, they can probably nail that OKR with their initiatives, and others need more help and they need more guidance. So it is also a bit like who you have in front of you, how often have they done this? That will determine how much we get involved, how much we have to guide to make sure it's a comprehensive plan in the end. So yeah, it's always a balancing act.
So as your company grew, did your metric to validate success of a product change? Do you have one North Star metric? I don't know, number of nights booked or whatever, or was it something more complex? So how do you evaluate value of a product as you go from like 0 to whatever?
Wow, we just had a discussion about it, our last management offsite, a massive discussion. Shall we reset the North Star metrics? Because in the end of in an ideal world, we're not doing that, but you should probably, is we're only as good as the success of our customers, right? If they grow their revenue, actually we have achieved our goal. We often don't really have insights into this. So it's a bit of a hard one to set, but like this is actually the mindset you should probably adopt. Leading up to, I think, last year, so commercial objectives were always very important to us in terms of like just growth, unlocking more units, helping more hotels, adopting more products. We had a lot of commercial objectives. We were looking at the typical usage stats, like how sticky were our users. This has changed completely last year because we changed the type of products we were putting in the market. So historically, these were BI products. You can imagine like dashboards, right? You want to keep people in the analysis loop. But now with the rise of AI, and we haven't even talked about this, but everybody does. So we're happy we're talking about it now. Obviously, we are in a position with a lot of data to also make decisions for hotels. So some of our hotels now run on tools that completely automate their pricing strategy. They don't log in, and their job is taken care of. Am I going to drive usage to my tool? No, I don't want them to go, right? They get value if they don't go because the job is automated. Yes, we are rethinking the North Star, and it will differ probably a bit per vertical as well, and per product that we offer. It's an ongoing discussion because in the end of the day, it has changed drastically from the typical user statistics to, what value are you actually solving for? And maybe no usage is the best usage. Yeah, massive change for us as well.
I think we're reaching out the end of this session. I'll just like to close on one sentence that I really connect to is when you say that you first need to nail your base product, and looking at the day after tomorrow is really something that you must earn. And I think I like really to emphasize on that to close the session, because quite often, especially in the starter scene, I hear people way too often diverging on all the different possibilities instead of nailing their base things. And maybe my last question is that, do you remember if there was really a particular moment when you say, okay, now we have deserved that? That's right.
I'm looking at Ivo. This was obviously before my time because I was hired to do it. But I know, like, for instance, for our core product, like, we had reached a certain customer base. We had an NPS of 75%, CSAT of more than 90 continuously throughout those years. That was, I think, the moment where, and also another thing, let's say people are satisfied with your product, static growth. You also see a bit in the type of customer requests, how big your feature gaps are, right? Are they asking for another filter? Or are they asking for a whole different, I don't know, like adjacent screen you've never even thought about? This shows you're not there, right? If like at scale you get feedback this is like far from what you're solving for right now, you're probably not there. But if they become smaller, they become iterative, they don't become like sales blockers, and the score is continuously high, how they talk about your product, then I think you have a good sense of, it's like the stupid thing about product market fit, was like you don't know it until you feel it. Like you feel it when you're there.
I think that's a great conclusion for this session. Thanks again a lot for all the time and all the insights. I think it's been very insightful. Probably we could continue the entire night, but I think we have to close because probably people start being hungry.